For the next session now, I'd like to call upon Rajesh Shrivastava, author and management consultant. Rajesh is an alumnus of IIT Kanpur and IIM Bangalore. He has spent over 3 decades as a manager in various sectors like beverages, food, commodities, personal care, and education. He was president of J.K. Helen Curtis, a Raymond company, before moving on to education and becoming an adjunct faculty at IIM Indore. He now works as a consultant and holds workshops for companies like Siemens, Mercedes-Benz, Reliance, and IE Business School of Spain, among others. His first book, The New Rules of Business, published in 2019, has been a national bestseller. His latest book is The 10 New Life-Changing Skills, which is the topic of his session today. Some of you may have picked up the book this morning. Let's hear about it more from Rajesh. So, the stage is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to share my perspectives with you. Let's get started. It is said that we are in the midst of Industry 4.0. And Industry 4.0 is powered by technology. And the bottom line is that this Industry 4.0 powered by technology, whenever technology collides with any industry, it actually disrupts it. An example, Netflix is a technology company. When it collided with entertainment industry, Hollywood, Bollywood has got disrupted. Take Amazon, a technology company. When it collided with retail, I think the retail industry has got disrupted. All of us here work in some of these industries. And what is being forecasted in Industry 4.0 is that every single industry is going to actually collide with technology, which means any industry that we work in, and here it's actually communication. When technology collides with communication, it will disrupt the industry that you work in, and as a result, your job and your career and your future is likely to be disrupted. So what should you do? You will ask me, is this your perspective or somebody else can actually vouch for it? So let me draw upon McKinsey. McKinsey has said, talking about Industry 4.0, that some jobs will die, new ones will be born, but every single job will change. Do I have any other reference? World Economic Forum has done a lot of work on Industry 4.0, and this is what World Economic Forum has to say. It says Industry 4.0 is not entirely formed as yet, and if Industry 4.0 is not entirely formed, then the jobs are not entirely created or fully formed. Then how can you prepare for a job that is not entirely formed? They pose this question and then they come out with an answer, and they've been actually talking about this for almost a decade. And what their answer is, hard skill you will have to have, but along with hard skill you need to have certain soft skill. And what these soft skills are is what World Economic Forum has identified, that if you have the soft skill coupled with the hard skill, then your career, no matter what form Industry 4.0 takes, is protected. And what are these? Creativity, innovation, critical thinking, framing the right questions, smart problem solving, lifelong learning, storytelling, influence without authority, humanness, entrepreneurial spirit. These are the 10 soft skills. You need to know. Without it, what will you be? It will be tantamount to using a rotary phone in an era of smartphone. It will be like being a bird without wings. Now, because of paucity of time, out of this, I will be introducing you to 3 skills. And these 3 skills are influence without authority, storytelling and critical thinking. And during question answers, if you wish any other skill to be expounded upon, to be explained or to be shared with you, please feel free. Now, these skills, according to me, are like the seat belts. If you have this around you, then I can assure you, and that's not just me, World Economic Forum, McKinsey, everyone says you're going to have a safe ride in Industry 4.0. Now, let's start with influence without authority. You're all communications people. Over your client, do you have any authority? Over your creative people who do the creative presentation, do you have any authority? And I worked in corporate. So let me just start and share with you how can you use this technique influence without authority, because it will enable you to bring others to your way of thinking, motivate them to support your initiative, and adopt your idea on their own free will. This will get you noticed, get you promoted and help rise in life. So let me start off. I worked in alcoholic beverages industry in United Spirits for almost a decade and a half. One of the brands I hope you would be familiar with, Signature, McDowell Signature, that name I had given while I was working in your city. There was yet another brand I used to handle, and that brand's name was, I will share two words from it. If you remember the rest of the tagline, then I think it was a powerful brand. The first three lines of that tagline is Khoob Jamega Rang. Can you? Right. Now that tagline was not meant for you, but you still remember it decades after it has stopped, right? Now I was handling that brand, and I dreamt up based on data which is published that we could make Bagpiper the world's largest. It was already India's largest. We said, based on data, I came out with this proposition, we could make Bagpiper the world's largest selling brand of blended Scotch whisky. I told my boss. He says, how much investment? And I told him a figure which was astronomically large, because you're required to up your production, you need to invest in advertising, you need to invest in marketing, upgrading, packaging, etc., etc., etc. So he says, it's not in my authority to sign this off, the investment, and it is multi-year. You will have to present it to the chairman. Our chairman was Dr. Vijay Mallya, and I was given the responsibility of presenting to him, and as luck would have it, it is just across the road. That presentation happened in Oberoi. Oberoi had not opened, it was a soft launch, and the year was early 90s. Now this is what I did. I looked at Dr. Mallya, he was sitting somewhere here, and I was making a presentation, and I said, you know what, in 1993 we have a vision to make Bagpiper the world's largest selling brand of blended Scotch whisky by the time the century rolls over. This is 1993, 7 years, it takes time. When I said this, I looked at him, he was not interested. I think many people would have sold him many dreams. So he didn't even look up, he was doodling. And I looked at my boss, he says, your dreams have gone up. I did not lose hope. I again took a deep breath and I said, Dr. Mallya, we will make Bagpiper the world's largest selling brand of blended Scotch whisky, and do you know what will happen to you? He looked up without saying anything with his eyebrow. He says, what? And this slide came. Time magazine with him on the cover, the year is 1993. Vijay Mallya, man behind the world's largest selling brand of blended Scotch whisky. This was a presentation where the highest authority of alcoholic beverages division were sitting. They broke into an applause. Dr. Mallya blushed, and he kept on looking at this picture for a few seconds, and then he looked at me and he said, can this happen? I said, of course sir, it can. What do I have to do? And I gave him the figure that was required. What was his next reaction? He looked at our president and said, what do you think? Now my president was in a tremendously delicate situation. He's seeing his boss hopelessly in love with getting on the Time magazine. He said, sir, we will make it happen. And this is what happened. Now, why did I share this with you? In this resides a strategy that I wish to share with you. I have used the working of human brain to sell this idea to Dr. Malia. What is the working of human brain? If you take a top view of your brain, gender neutral, there are 3 layers roughly. Inner layer is called limbic, where emotion resides. Outer layer is basically extended limbic, where behavior resides. And the last layer is called neocortex, which recently happened, where rationality, power of speech, etc. resides. What is the strategy that you got to do? Which Arnab Goswami does every day on television. You got to pose a rhetorical question whose answer will always be yes. You got to pose a rhetorical question whose answer will always be yes. So what question did I pose to Dr. Malia? Do you want to be on the cover of Time magazine? It touched his emotion. And the moment it touched his emotion, he must have said yes to himself, and his behavior towards me changed, and he said, what do I have to do? Rational part. And I said, sir, this much. And he agreed. Arnab Goswami does it every day, right? Pose a rhetorical question whose answer will always be yes. But for that, you need to have a consumer insight into the person to whom you are presenting. Now, don't misuse it. But this is one technique. Second, let's move from alcohol and glamour down to rural India. Now, one of the things that is actually plaguing is women. Even today, many women in villages, go and answer the call of nature in the open. Not only is it dangerous, but health-wise, hygiene-wise, it is extremely dangerous for the women, hygiene-wise. And therefore, toilets need to be built in their home. Now, if you want toilets to be built, get a consumer insight. You have to convince the mother-in-law, because the daughter and the daughter-in-law are controlled by the mother-in-law, not by the father-in-law. So, I am going to share with you a small study that was done. We went to a village with this consumer insight that the mother-in-law is the gatekeeper. And what did we do to the mother-in-law? We sat down with her and said, in Hindi, the local language, we said, your daughter and daughter-in-law are going out to answer the call of nature. Don't you think it is bad? She looked sternly and said, for centuries it is being done. That time it was not bad. You think now it is bad just because you say it? When she was saying this, one of my friend took a picture of her, unnoticed by her. When she completed this, we showed her the picture. And then she said in Hindi, when did you take this picture? I did not even notice it. And then we said, Amma, we took it on a phone. It is silent. It is very cheap. There are many boys in this village where you stay, they have this. Unseen, they can take picture of your daughter and daughter-in-law in embarrassing position and then show it to the whole village. And do you want this picture to be seen by the whole country and the whole world? She was aghast. She says, no, what should I do? And the answer was, please build a toilet. Now, what was the strategy used? The strategy used was the context. When the context changes, everything changes. What does context mean? Earlier, there was no smartphone, so it could have been nice. Now, the context is changed. So, tomorrow, when you make a presentation to your bosses, to your client, and you want to get them or influence them, then change the context and tell them how in the revised context he needs to be influenced or change his mind. Third, from alcohol, the villages, let's move to the most difficult person. I have a son, he's a stand-up comic. Now, people who have children know how difficult it is to get the children to change their mind. My son is a stand-up comic. His work hours were from 9 p.m. to 12 p.m. We stay in Mumbai. And all of you know that Mumbai changes in the night. Me and my wife, we used to be very scared. Where is he? How is he? And unfortunately, he would never call, but just come and ring the bell. And whenever he rang the bell at, let's say, 12:30 a.m. or 1 p.m., I would get up extremely agitated and say, Kautuk, is this the time to come home? He would not say anything, but his face would say, for your sleep, you want me to give up my dream? And he would go and shut the bedroom door, and the tension would continue the next day. It was happening. And then I decided to change the strategy. That night when he came, I opened the door and I said, hey Kautuk, how was your show? He says, Dad, amazing. You know what? We got 10 claps. I had to wait for a few minutes. I said, wonderful. He was still smiling. And then I said, Kautuk, you know what? Can I make a request? He says, yeah, Dad, tell me. You know, as parents, Kautuk, we are very scared. Can you just message us where you are? He says, yeah, Dad, I know I want to message, but after the show, the audience come and, surround us, get talking to us, and then we comics have dinner and I forget. But I promise I will do this. And he did a lot of time. What technique did I use? Transactional analysis. Each one of us have parent, adult, child. I have it, my son has it. So when I went and said, you are coming late, I can't sleep, my parent was on top. And when my parent was on top, my son's child was awakened and he says, no matter what I do, you're never satisfied. I think because of your sleep, you want me to kill my career. Whenever there is cross communication, it will lead to conflict. So what did I do? That night when I went, I awakened my adult and I said, Kautuk, how are you? When I spoke to him like an adult, he also became an adult. And as a result, what happened was there was no conflict and a solution was there. What's the lesson for you? When you present to your client, to your bosses, and they say, hey, there's no strategy. You guys are always late. Now, his parent is awakened. Don't let your child come up. Oh, you're always upset with me. You never agree with me. Say, yes, sir, you're right. But can you tell me why is there no strategy? Can I explain it to you? When you bring your adult, the client's adult or the boss's adult will also surface. So please keep the communication adult to adult. Don't go in for cross communication. Let's move to the next part. The company based here is just a representation. Whether it's Amazon, Uber, what are they doing? They're making you behave the way they want without you realizing it. And how do they do that? Using principles of behavioral sciences. I'll just give you a simple example. My book. Obviously, I go to check out where is my book doing, but most of the time I see only 2 copies left. So the moment I see 2 copies left, there is, in behavioral sciences, there is a concept called we respond more to fear, 2 times more to fear than a similar gain, to a loss than to a similar gain. Now, take air tickets. If you have to go and see, let's say, your mother, and Air Asia says only 2 tickets left, what will you do? You'll immediately book it, and 10 days later you go there, you will still see 2 tickets left, right? Now the next thing, Prime, Amazon Prime, what have they done? They made you become a member, you paid a fees, and then you get everything free. You know, they don't charge you for transportation. What is the psychology here, behavioral science? Is called sunk cost fallacy. Unknown to you, you paid whatever, 1200, 1800, 900, whatever you paid. In your mind, you say, hey man, I paid this 900, now I got to recover it. And in the process of recovering, you end up shopping 2.5 times more than a non-Prime member, right? So use principles of behavioral sciences to get your customers to behave the way you want without them realizing it, but don't manipulate. Okay, the last thing I want to say, if you don't like any of this, me and my wife had gone to Dhaka. No trip to Dhaka is complete unless you get the Dhaka sari. So me and my wife went to a sari store. This person showed all the saris that were there, and my wife was liking each one of them until finally she chose one and she asked the price. The price that that person said was huge, humongous. So my wife looked at me, what should I do? And the shopkeeper knew that this was a make or break thing. So he took that sari and he did like this, and that small Dhaka sari flopped up like a whole mountain. And then he looked at my wife and said, Bodhi. Bodhi in Bengali is sister. He says, Bodhi, can I have your ring? So she was embarrassed. She says, why? He said, just give me. So she gave this ring. The person took and cleaned it, and then he took one end of that sari, put it into this, and he called a person, and that person started walking away. Within seconds, the whole sari had passed through this ring. What did it tell us? It just told us a very simple thing. The quality is so good that it passes through the ring, and then price became immaterial. What is the next thing? If you want to influence people, then demonstrate your benefit. And lastly, if everything you feel is too complex, then like John T. Rhodes built a reputation of a great, in this case he built a reputation of being a great fielder. What does that mean? It simply means that Ravi Shastri in his biography, in this book that he has written recently, says whenever the ball went to John T. Rhodes, none of our batsmen ever dared to take a run for the fear that he could get them out. So if everything fails, build a awesome reputation. Let's move to storytelling. Storytelling is by far the most, your communication guys, you know it better than me, is the most powerful way of putting ideas into the world, right? So let me just start off. We are all business people. Does it lead to value creation in dollar terms? So here's an experiment that was done called the significant project study. Significant project study actually bought 200 objects at 129 from eBay. They just picked up 200 objects and paid 129 without thought. Then they did, because it was a research, they did a simple thing. They got storytellers to associate stories with each of the trinkets. Suppose they had bought this pen and they got me as a storyteller. It's all made up. I would say that you know the song that recently won this award, right? The lyrics was written by this pen, right? Like that, I would just associate stories, and not just me, various people. 6 months later, the same object, 200 objects which was bought for 129, now the same object 6 months later was put up on the same channel, eBay, and it sold along with the story, and it sold for $3,612, an appreciation of 2,700. What do you make of it? An object with a story is far more valuable than just the object itself. And advertising is basically about story that you actually create around a brand. So please remember, stories have the power to actually create value in dollar terms. Let's take a commodity, ring, right? Ring is a ring is a ring. How can you attach a story with a ring? Cartier, what did he do? He took the simple ring that all women wear, gifted many times by their boyfriends, by their husbands during engagement. And what did he do? He took the simple ring and associated a story with it. This ring, he actually took 3 rings and put them in an eternal embrace and put 3 color gold. And he said, pink color symbolizes love, yellow fidelity, and white friendship. This is the story that he built. Now, when this gentleman is giving this ring to his fiancée, and he says, here's this ring so that I can love you, I will be faithful to you, and our friendship will endure till eternity. The girl receiving the ring is no longer receiving a ring. She is receiving a promise which she desires. And many women I have seen have tears in their eyes, right? Now, just see this, a simple ring with a story. And today it is one of the fastest moving things in the Cartier portfolio if you have a look, right? It commands, so power of story, it helps you command price premium and it builds preference, and the list is endless. So let me just share some more things with you. I taught in IIM for 7 years. It's almost about a decade. Many of my students are in senior position and they say, sir, you taught us about strategy, how to create great brands, how to create compelling brands. But one thing that you did not teach us was how to manage up. We have a great strategy, but my boss refuses to listen. Now to answer that, I tell them a story. I said, Michelangelo, when he made David, there was a preview before it was open to public, and all who's who of Florence came. And among the person who had contributed the most to the statue looked at Michelangelo and the statue and says, you know, that nose is not proper. There was a stunned silence because Michelangelo was supposed to be eccentric. That day, good sense prevailed. Michelangelo looked at him and says, yes, you're right. And he picked up his chisel and the hammer. While doing so, he also picked up droppings of marble, the dust, and the chip, marble chip, and he climbed the stairs. And he made this motion of chipping the stone. And while he was chipping, he let a little bit of marble dust come to the ground. And then after a few minutes, he says, "Sir, is it looking nice?" The person who had said the nose is not proper, he says, "Yeah, it looks super, you come down." Right? This story is what I have narrated to my bosses, to my students, and they say, "So we got it now." Right? So don't engage with your boss and say, "Hey, the nose is right, you don't know how to look at it, you'll get sacked." Right? Let's move from bosses to the next person. Right? Communicating bad news, and the story happened here. I was doing a workshop for one of the greatest companies of our country, but and to do the workshop, I needed to find out what their challenges was. The workshop is supposed to solve a problem. I'm not supposed to flaunt my knowledge, but whenever I call these people, they would always be busy. In any way, I got hold of them through whichever means the workshop went well, but I needed to communicate to them that your greatest asset of 21st century, which is your time and attention, is not in your control, so your career does not seem to be in a good hands. Now, how do you communicate? If I say this, they will feel bad. They are from one of the biggest multinational companies, middle to senior managers. So I took a story, a Zen story, and I said, after the workshop was the last story, I said, when the workshop was getting over, I said, there was this young man who was astride a horse, and the horse was galloping, and this young man was sitting atop it. As it went round a corner, an old uncle sitting screamed out, "Young man, where are you going?" The young man said, "Uncle, I don't know, ask the horse." Right? When I said this, like you, many of the participants laughed. It was the energy coming out. I said, "Why did you laugh?" He said, "Sir, we got the message that we have no control over our time, over our attention, and if that happens, I think our career is not going to head anywhere." Another thing, that you can communicate bad news through the story, and you will be effective in communicating without hurting them. Now let's move on, because of time shortage, to one more thing. Now here, so let me just demonstrate this to you. In this very city, an alcoholic beverages company was launching alcohol in PET bottle. Earlier it all came in glass bottle. So this was the company strategy. The sales people who were called for the annual conference, they knew some big announcement was coming, but they did not know what. So the next day, as per agenda, 9 o'clock, everyone has to be in their place, and the president was very particular. Time means time. So everybody was in their place. President walked in 2 minutes. Like there's a head table, he's sitting there, and in front the company had proudly exhibited all their liquor brands. Right? President came and sat, and at the stroke of 9, the meeting began. Unfortunately, for a senior member who could not make it at 9, he knew the danger of walking in, and if the president sees him, then I think he would actually be very cruel to him in terms of the voice or the words that he will use. So what did he do? He tried to sneak into the room from the furthest door, slowly opening it, hoping that the president will not see him. As his luck would have him, as he was coming through this door, the president saw him coming, and what he did was, in front of him was this alcohol bottle. He picked up that alcohol bottle and he took it, and I'm not going to throw this, he took it and he took a aim, right, like this, right, and he threw it full force. There was a stunned silence. Everybody was scared that if this PET bottle hits that person, he is going to be seriously hurt. The bottle is going to hit the ground or the wall, it will break into millions of pieces, and there is going to be some drama now. The person who was sneaking into the room saw the missile coming, he ducked. The missile fell a little bit away from him. He is stunned. He was also expecting the bottle to break. The bottle did not break, and the president screamed, "You are late, and you are not even picking up that bottle and returning it to me. Return it." That person, very with scared, brought the bottle, and he said, "This is the bottle that this company is launching. It is made up of plastic for people like you who come late, and for customers who actually travel and the whiskey bottle breaks, spoiling clothes. This is how the PET bottle was launched. Now, what did the president do? The president staged a drama in which he made every single person in that room an actor. And this is the new thing. Story is passé. Now start enacting dramas and make your audience into participants. And if you do that, what is the framework? The framework is very simple: passive, active, involved, immersed. When you stage a drama, people will be actively immersed. That's experiential marketing, a higher level, right? So now quit communication, quit storytelling, focus on enacting dramas and making your audience into actors. Now from here, let's move to the last part. Elon Musk in news, whether we hate him, don't like him, but he's a person who at least I admire, and I'm sure many of us admire. What sets him apart? What sets him apart is a very simple thing. He has challenged traditions, questioned assumptions, and defied norms of the world. Example: before he launched Tesla, it was generally assumed that automobiles, when they move, it's an IC engine, it will pollute. He questioned this assumption and said, when automobile move, why should they pollute? I will give you clean transportation. And he became Tesla became the world's most valuable company. The project to Mars, he's defied norms. You require billions and trillions of dollars to go to Mars, and he's doing it in millions. California, Los Angeles, it will always be congested. He says why? He's questioned that tradition, and he's gone in for that boring company, Hyperloops, etc. What is he? What is this trait called? It's called critical thinking. He's a great critical thinker. And what is a good critical thinker? They challenge tradition, question assumption, defy norms. They reason through logic, filter out biases, possess diversity of thoughts, and do not fall victim to heuristic shortcuts. This enables them to arrive at better judgments, think deeply, and become skilled problem solvers. Each one of you now has to start becoming good, excellent at critical thinking by challenging tradition, questioning assumptions, and defying norms. You will say, hey man, Elon Musk is extraordinary. He can do it, but why I can't? So I will tell you, look at me. Look at my height, look at my voice. I have nothing which is powerful. But during the course of my career, I have defied all these three things. An example: deodorant. Before me, I was the president of JK Helen Curtis. Before me, the size was 66 crores in the year 2002. Today, it is 8,000 crores. No retail store can run unless it has a deo. What is the reason for it to grow by almost 1,000 times? The reason is I challenged the tradition that deo has to be sold as deo, and I said no to deo and yes to perfume. Today, there is no brand that can sell, including multinational brands, unless they say I'm perfume. I challenge this tradition. Many of you may have heard of Blue Ribbon Duet. Has anyone? I was the person who created it, starting from the brand name, the concept in the year 1990. It is questioning assumption. Gin has to be plain and you have to add lime juice cordial. We added lime juice cordial into it, and it was the first premixed gin in our country. And last, many of you may not have heard it, but it sold 500,000 cases. Defied norms. Before me, alcoholic beverages were sold as lifestyle products. I was the first person who said we should sell it as a solution to people's problem. What is the problem drinkers have? Hangover. This says good morning after great evenings. Right? It sold 500,000 cases. Right? 500,000 cases. And the girl is fully dressed. Right? Is defying norms of advertising. And instead of an evening party, it is early morning. Right? So if I can do it, why can't you? And that's the question you got to ask. And I end this by saying I could only touch 3. These are the 10 skills that you must have. But here's a small plea. These skills are important for you, but it is even more important for your children who are at home. You've already done 10 years, 15 years of your career. Your children are starting out. If your children are not introduced to these skills, then they will be like birds without wings, or they will use rotary phone in an era of smartphone. So it is your responsibility to become familiar with this skill and have a drawing room conversation in your home around these skills. Right? If you have any question, would be delighted to answer. Thank you so much.